We are introduced to Isu, who sits in a taxi lost in thought, reflecting on the state of his life. He realizes that while living without a clear purpose or direction hadn't felt particularly bad before, a sudden and unexpected question now shakes the foundation of his existence. This question sets him on a journey to uncover the meaning behind his life. Isu arrives at a home, where he walks in to find an older man occupied with tending to a fireplace. The atmosphere is calm, but the stillness is abruptly shattered by the sound of a gunshot ringing out. Before we can fully process the scene, the narrative shifts, taking us 2 months into the past, where we get a glimpse of Isu's life during a more carefree and lighthearted time. The flashback invites us into Isu's world, starting with a tour of his lavish home. His apartment is sleek, modern, and immaculately maintained, just as you'd expect from a wealthy bachelor. However, this isn't the cold, impersonal kind of luxury that feels staged for a glossy magazine spread. Instead, his space brims with personality, offering a peek into his indulgent lifestyle and hobbies. From shelves lined with expensive model cars to branded surfboards and a gleaming heavy bike, every corner of Isu's home tells a story of his interests and wealth. His assistant, Choi Young-hoon, who serves as a combination of personal valet, butler, and right-hand man, makes an appearance, delivering freshly squeezed juice, highlighting the efficiency and order in Isu's life. Despite his extravagant setup, there's a subtle boyish charm or perhaps man-child energy that comes through in details like an elaborate key storage system. Each key corresponds to a model car, representing one of the many high-end vehicles parked in his sprawling 10-car garage. It's the kind of whimsical luxury that makes you both roll your eyes and envy the creativity behind it. Who wouldn't want a miniature version of their sports car accompanying their keys? Isu's home perfectly captures the essence of his character: wealthy, unconventional, and surprisingly relatable. The butler pulls open the heavy curtains, flooding Isu's room with bright sunlight. The golden rays stream in, landing directly on Isu's face, forcing him to stir and wake up to begin another early morning. Still half asleep, Isu groggily reaches for the glass of fresh juice taking a sip as he lets out a long yawn. The sound immediately catches the butler's attention, who, with evident concern, inquires about the quality of Isu's sleep the previous night. Lately, Isu hasn't been sleeping well, and even a single yawn is enough to set off alarms for his attentive butler. Shaking off of his sleep, Isu grabs the remote and switches on the TV. He navigates to a YouTube channel featuring a vlogger enthusiastically filming himself in the water. Laughing, Isu tells his assistant over to watch. The two share a brief moment of lighthearted amusement, with Isu commenting on how cool and carefree the vlog seems. The ceiling-to-floor window in Isu's room reflects the breathtaking view of the Han River just beyond his luxurious apartment. It's a sight few in Korea can claim to wake up to, a symbol of Isu's wealth and privilege. The butler, ever diligent, steps back and pats on Isu's suit jacket. With a serious tone, he reminds Isu that the management strategy meeting is set to begin in 2 hours and that his presence as the head of the team is absolutely essential. Isu, however, seems entirely uninterested in the pressures of his corporate responsibilities. With a dramatic sigh, he tosses himself back onto the bed, pulling the covers up in an exaggerated display of defiance. "I need more sleep," he mutters, closing his eyes. Without hesitation, he instructs his assistant to inform the team that he won't be attending the meeting because he's too tired. The assistant looks flustered but knows better than to argue with Isu when he's in this mood. And so, Isu curls back into his cozy bed, ignoring the looming demands of the day, basking in the comfort of his luxurious world where even the most pressing matters can be delayed at his command. Isu begins his day by blatantly avoiding his responsibilities, skipping a critical meeting where his absence speaks louder than words. In the grand conference room, his father, Chairman Jin Myung-chul, and his older brother, Jin Sung-ju, exchange sharp looks as they glance at Isu's conspicuously empty chair. Meanwhile, back at home, Isu is fast asleep in his pitch-black bedroom, oblivious to the mounting tension. His phone buzzes with a furious message from his brother, cussing him out and demanding to know his whereabouts. But Isu, unfazed and cocooned in his luxurious sheets, continues sleeping through the day as if the outside world doesn't exist. It isn't until the sun sets and the city is cloaked in darkness that Isu is abruptly awakened by the sharp, jarring sound of his phone. Bleary-eyed, he checks the notification. It's an emergency. A kidnapping case has just been reported. Jolted into action, Isu leaps out of bed and heads straight to the shower, shaking off the remnants of his long nap. Afterward, he informs his assistant about the urgent situation, his tone serious and focused. Descending the elegant staircase of his luxurious home, Isu makes his way to his expansive walk-in closet. Here, he transforms from a seemingly lazy socialite into a highly skilled member of an elite SWAT team. He selects a tailored tactical suit, perfectly designed for both agility and style. Initially, he considers taking his sleek BMW to the scene but changes his mind at the last second, opting for his powerful motorcycle instead. After donning his helmet, he revs the engine and speeds off, the roar of his bike echoing through the bright streets of Seoul. As he arrives at the crime scene, the atmosphere is tense and chaotic. Lee-soo wastes no time heading inside, exuding confidence and authority. He approaches one of his juniors and demands an update on the situation. The junior briefs him quickly there are 30 armed kidnappers inside the building. Lee-soo processes the information with a calm, calculated demeanor and moves forward with purpose. Navigating the floors of the building, Lee-soo engages in an intense shootout with the masked kidnappers. His sharp reflexes and expert marksmanship allow him to take down multiple assailants with precision. Amid the chaos, Lee-soo remains composed, reloading his weapon efficiently as he clears the path to their target. Finally, he reaches the room where the kidnapped girl is being held. She's tied to a chair, her face pale but defiant. As one of Lee-soo's comrades moves to untie her, a hidden attacker suddenly emerges and fires a shot, wounding the officer. Without hesitation, Lee-soo springs into action. In a daring, gravity-defying move, he leaps into the air and fires at the assailant mid-jump. Landing gracefully, Lee-soo quickly draws his knife and cuts through the ropes binding the girl. He asks the girl in a gentle yet firm tone if she's unharmed. The girl, surprisingly unfazed by the ordeal, looks at Lee-soo and says, "That was fun." Lee-soo helps her to her feet, his mind already racing to figure out the next steps. Despite the danger and chaos of the mission, one thing is clear. This is just another day in Lee-soo's extraordinary life. What initially seems like a high-stakes mission brimming with danger and adrenaline quickly reveals itself to be nothing more than an over-the-top, incredibly expensive live-action role-playing game. The mastermind behind this theatrical spectacle? Lee-soo, though, to be fair, it's mostly funded by his father, Chairman Jean. It's almost unbelievable that Chairman Jean continues to indulge Lee-soo's outrageous whims and frivolous spending habits. The sheer scale of wealth in play here is staggering, a testament to just how deep the Jean family's pockets go. Nearby, a janitor observes the chaotic scene and, with raised eyebrows, questions Lee-soo's assistant about whether this is how all chaebols choose to burn through their money. The assistant offers a small, apologetic smile and reassures her that not all chaebols behave this way. Lee-soo is an outlier, a special case. Meanwhile, a real and far more serious chase is unfolding elsewhere in the city. Two police officers are in hot pursuit of Oh Byung-soo, a murder suspect on the run. Lee Gang-hyun, the formidable leader of the violent crimes investigation team, takes the lead, maneuvering her car with sharp precision as she closes in on the fleeing criminal. Byung-soo desperately tries to evade capture, climbing over a caged gate in a last-ditch attempt to escape. However, his efforts are futile. Lee Gang-hyun corners him with calculated ease, stepping out of her car with an air of authority. As she approaches the suspect, her voice cuts through the tense air like steel. "You're under arrest for robbery and murder," she declares firmly. The cornered man, however, isn't ready to give up. He pulls out a knife, brandishing it menacingly and threatening her. Unfazed by the danger, Lee Gang-hyun remains calm and collected, her tone laced with dry amusement as she orders him to drop his weapon. When he refuses to comply, she doesn't hesitate. In a flash, she pulls out her taser and deploys it with precision. The suspect collapses to the ground, incapacitated. Once subdued, the suspect is restrained and propped up as the team waits for him to regain consciousness. When he finally wakes, he is visibly startled to find himself face-to-face with Lee Gang-hyun and her team. Their composed yet intimidating presence leaves no room for negotiation. The leader wastes no time and demands to know the whereabouts of his accomplice. Stammering, the suspect insists that he doesn't know. Lee Gang-hyun, unimpressed by his denial, gestures toward her car where her taser gun is plugged in, charging ominously. She gestures toward the taser with a calm yet menacing demeanor, making it clear that it is nearly fully charged and that she was prepared to use it again if he refuses to cooperate. Her calm yet threatening tone causes the suspect to break into a cold sweat. He tries to plead his innocence, but the sound of the taser beeping indicating it's ready shatters his composure. Desperate to avoid another jolt, the suspect swears he doesn't know anything. Lee Gang-hyun isn't convinced. "3 people are dead," she says sharply. "You're telling me you have no idea what's going on?" Under the weight of her unrelenting interrogation, the suspect finally cracks. He confesses that a cellmate he met in prison introduced him to a job. When he arrived at the designated location, he found the 3 bodies already there. Terrified, he panicked and fled. The team doesn't stop there. They order the suspect to call his accomplice, leaving him with no choice but to comply. Meanwhile, Byung-soo works with a sketch artist to create a composite drawing of his former cellmate, adding another piece to the puzzle in this unfolding investigation. At the police station, the suspect remains detained while Kang-hyun, the team leader, studies the evidence board in her office. The board is cluttered with the names and photographs of the victims, alongside the profiles of the suspects. Despite the progress, the identity of the primary culprit remains elusive. Determined to move the case forward, she gathers her team and organizes them into 3 groups. She assigns Junyoung and Kyungjun to escort Byung-soo to the designated meeting place, while the second team is instructed to stand by in an alley nearby, prepared for any unexpected developments. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, the remaining team members wait in anticipation for the suspect to arrive. Elsewhere in the city, after a long day of pretending to be a cop, Lee-soo decides to unwind in his own extravagant way. Renting out an entire club, he invites his friends to join him for a wild night of partying. However, the festivities take an unexpected turn when one of his friends goes missing. Concerned, Lee-soo leaves the club to search for him personally. Outside, he discovers his friend sitting in a car, visibly high and surrounded by remnants of drugs. True to his disciplined persona, Lee-soo confronts his friend, launching into an impromptu intervention. He disposes of the remaining stash and sternly reminds him of the promise he had made to stop using drugs. Lee-soo reiterates his earlier warning that he will cut ties if his friend continues down this path. As Lee-soo lectures his friend, his attention is momentarily diverted by a phone call from his brother, Sung-ju. On the line, Sung-ju demands to know where Lee-soo is. Lee-soo casually replies that he's out wasting his time somewhere. Sung-ju, unimpressed, orders him to focus and reminds him of an important conference scheduled in just 9 hours. He instructs Lee-soo to head home and prepare for the next day. After the call ends, Lee-soo turns back to find his friend causing yet another problem, this time harassing a random bystander for a lighter. Before Lee-soo can intervene, the panicked bystander notices Lee-soo's fake SWAT uniform, mistakes him for a real officer, and retaliates by slashing Lee-soo's friend with a knife before attempting to flee. Lee-soo immediately springs into action, chasing the bystander down. When the chase leads to a dead end, Lee-soo relies on his professional-level MMA skills to subdue the man. He breaks the bystander's arm, disarms him of the knife, and knocks him unconscious. At that exact moment, Kang-hyun arrives on the scene. She spots Lee-soo standing over the unconscious man, holding the makeshift weapon. Misinterpreting the situation, and with no context for Lee-soo's actions, Kang-hyun assumes he is the aggressor. Wasting no time, she arrests him for assault. Lee-soo protests, warning her that she'll regret this decision, but Kang-hyun remains unfazed. She handcuffs him and takes him into custody without hesitation. Back at the police station, the truth about Lee-soo's identity is revealed. He is the youngest son of the powerful Hanso group. As the officers prepare to go out for a meal, Kang-hyun's superior storms in, furious over the situation. He reprimands her for arresting a chaebol instead of focusing on the actual murder suspect. To make matters worse, it turns out Kang-hyun had accidentally broken Lee-soo's nose during the arrest. Kang-hyun defends her actions, asserting that Lee-soo assaulted a passerby while intoxicated. Her superior, however, insists she release Lee-soo immediately and avoid creating unnecessary complications. Unyielding, Kang-hyun fires back, maintaining that Lee-soo was caught red-handed in the act. Despite her protests, the situation spirals out of her control, setting the stage for further conflict between Kang-hyun and Lee-soo. Despite Lee-soo's repeated claims of innocence, he spends the night in jail. The timing couldn't be worse, as the very next day, Chairman Jin, his father, formally announces his candidacy for mayor. What should have been a triumphant moment quickly turns sour when Lee Ki-suk, a notoriously nosy reporter who often lurks at the police station for gossip, breaks the news to the press during Chairman Jin's press conference. His youngest son has been arrested. The revelation sparks immediate ridicule, turning Chairman Jin into a laughingstock. Furious and humiliated, Chairman Jin confronts Lee-soo. Rather than hearing him out or helping him clear his name, he angrily threatens to disown him. The tense exchange lays bare the strained and complicated father-son dynamic, hinting at years of unresolved issues. Meanwhile, Kang-hyun, though biased against privileged chaebols, finds herself troubled by Lee-soo's insistence that his actions were in self-defense and that the so-called victim had been armed with a knife. Intrigued despite herself, she decides to revisit the crime scene. Her persistence pays off when she discovers the knife Lee-soo mentioned, hidden in a rain gutter. But that's not the most shocking revelation. Upon further investigation, Kang-hyun learns that the man Lee-soo incapacitated is none other than the murderer her team has been unsuccessfully pursuing for months. The discovery leaves the police department scrambling to manage what has now become a massive public relations disaster. They're at a loss for how to spin the narrative, especially since Lee-soo was initially arrested as the aggressor. This is where Sung-ju, Lee-soo's older brother, steps in. Sung-ju proves he's not the stereotypical eldest chaebol son consumed by rivalry or resentment toward his younger sibling. Unlike Chairman Jin, Sung-ju genuinely cares for Lee-soo and is willing to help him. When he overhears police officers gossiping in the hall about the fact that the man Lee-soo subdued was a wanted murderer, Sung-ju devises a clever solution to salvage both the family's reputation and the police department's credibility. His idea? Make Lee-soo a cop. At first glance, the proposal seems absurd, but Sungju has thought it through. Lee-soo, who has wide range of hobbies and accomplishments, just so happens to hold a law degree and a lawyer's license. Sungju suggests that the police and the family frame the situation as Lee-soo being hired as a detective through a special program. The fabricated story not only saves the police from admitting that a civilian captured a dangerous criminal but also allows Chairman Jean to reframe the scandal in his favor, portraying Lee-soo as someone dedicated to serving the community. However, Lee-soo himself is far from thrilled with the arrangement. Becoming a real cop means tedious paperwork and long hours of monotonous work, hardly appealing to an adrenaline junkie like him. Yet, despite his reluctance, Lee-soo finds himself backed into a corner. Sungju, aware of his younger brother's softer side, emotionally manipulates him into going along with the plan. Lee-soo may not care about his father's political ambitions, but he refuses to let his brother face the fallout of retracting the carefully crafted lie. With little choice, Lee-soo agrees, setting the stage for an unexpected new chapter in his life. Lee-soo, much to Kang-hyun's surprise, actually shows up at the police station. However, he's not there to do any real work. If it were up to him, he'd much rather spend his time playing video games at his high-tech desk, enjoying his usual comforts. But Kang-hyun and her teammate, Park Jun-young, decide to give him a little hazing in an attempt to make him realize that being a true cop involves much more than just playing pretend. They want to break him out of his role-playing game mindset and show him that the job requires hard work, dedication, and focus. However, despite their efforts to make his life more difficult, Lee-soo's wealth and fame give him an undeniable advantage. His status opens doors and allows him to take shortcuts, which, ironically, end up being effective in thwarting Kang-hyun's attempts at making him feel miserable or out of place. The first major case that lands on Kang-hyun's team is the mysterious death of a model found on a yacht. Kang-hyun insists that Lee-soo accompany the team to the crime scene, but she makes sure he stays on the sidelines, out of the way, so that he doesn't interfere with the investigation or potentially contaminate the scene. Afterward, Kang-hyun drags him along to the model's agency, where she assigns him the task of interviewing the agency's employees while she speaks with the CEO. Lee-soo, a handsome and carefree chaebol, finds himself tasked with questioning a group of models. If Kang-hyun was hoping to make him despise the more tedious parts of being a detective, she completely fails. If anything, Lee-soo embraces the opportunity, finding ways to enjoy himself even in the most mundane aspects of the job. Although Lee-soo can find ways to make the best of Kang-hyun's hazing attempts, he can't ignore the fact that she refuses to take him seriously. Could it be that Lee-soo, someone who often seeks validation and affection from his fans on social media to cope with his unresolved daddy issues, cannot tolerate someone like Kang-hyun disliking him without reason? His friend points out that Kang-hyun's disdain for him actually has a foundation. The police force is still reeling from the embarrassment of the time Lee-soo captured a murderer. Their egos are bruised, and they're desperate to avoid him outshining them again. With this in mind, Lee-soo sees an opportunity to strike back and show Kang-hyun that he is capable of being more than just a spoiled chaebol. What better way to pay her back for her hazing than by solving the case before she does? The next day, Lee-soo shows up at the model's autopsy, much to Kang-hyun's surprise. His entry is not without difficulties, as the sight of the body triggers his PTSD, causing him to falter. Things go from bad to worse when Lee-soo tries to impress Kang-hyun and the forensics doctor, Yoon Ji-won, with his pseudo-intellectual theories, only to have them quickly dismissed by the more experienced women. What should have been a humbling moment for Lee-soo turns into a spark of determination. Instead of being discouraged by his failures, he becomes more determined to prove himself. He decides to officially challenge Kang-hyun. If he fails to catch the murderer before her, he will stick to desk duty, but if he manages to beat her to the arrest, she will have to admit that he's a legitimate cop. Thanks to some crucial CCTV footage, the team is able to pinpoint the youngest son of DN Media as a potential suspect in the case. However, despite knowing who they're looking for, no one can seem to track him down. This is where Lee-soo's lavish lifestyle becomes an unexpected advantage. He spots a location from the suspect's last social media post and, without informing the rest of the team about his whereabouts, he takes matters into his own hands. Lee-soo breezes past the security at an exclusive, members-only spa, heading straight to where the suspect is enjoying a relaxing session in a tanning bed. By the time Kang-hyun figures out where the suspect is hiding, Lee-soo has already dragged the man out of his tanning bed and is pulling him toward the entrance of the spa. Meanwhile, Kang-hyun is arguing with the security team that is, in her opinion, unlawfully blocking her entry. As the situation escalates, more security guards arrive, and for a brief moment, Lee-soo and Kang-hyun put their differences aside. They reluctantly team up to deal with the security guards, who seem more interested in protecting the spa's exclusivity than allowing the arrest to happen. Together, they manage to take down the overpriced thugs, clearing the way to finally arrest the suspect. This moment sets the stage for what looks like the beginning of a comedic, yet thrilling, buddy cop dynamic and perhaps even a hate-to-love romance. So far, the contrast between Lee Soo's extravagant spending habits and his natural charisma makes him an entertaining character to follow. Despite all his flaws and the seemingly frivolous nature of his actions, it's clear that Lee Soo has talents that, while not surpassing those of the more experienced professionals, still make him useful in certain situations. His personality is equal parts frustrating and endearing, and viewers are left intrigued, eager to peel back the layers and learn what drives his behavior. Clearly, there are unresolved daddy issues and trauma from witnessing his mother's death, but there's also a curiosity about the bond he shares with his brother and how they've maintained such a close relationship despite everything they've been through. Kang Hyun, on the other hand, also has her own complexities. On the surface, she presents herself as a no-nonsense, tough-as-nails cop, but as the audience sees, especially when she's at home, there's more to her than meets the eye. At home, Kang Hyun shares a healthy, warm relationship with her parents, particularly her father, Lee Hyung-jun, who is a retired cop himself. This side of Kang Hyun reveals that underneath her tough exterior, she's not as cold as she might seem. Perhaps the biggest indication of her softer side comes when she's alone, relaxing at home and watching cute kitten videos, a moment where she falls asleep, clearly at ease and far removed from the intense and demanding world she faces as a cop. Our two heroes, Kang Hyun and Lee Soo, face off against a large group of security guards. However, despite being outnumbered, they are certainly not outmatched. The way they quickly subdue their attackers clearly shows that the security guards hired for their jobs aren't skilled in hand-to-hand combat. It becomes apparent that their primary duties consist more of intimidating the lower-class patrons and blocking their entry into the upscale spa. Unfortunately for the security team, their vanity muscles aren't nearly enough to stop the trained cops. As Kang Hyun and Lee Soo swiftly take down the opposition, the third son of DN Media's chairman, who is their prime suspect, stands on the sidelines watching the brawl. He is terrified but, surprisingly, too clueless to realize that this is the perfect opportunity for him to escape. Instead, he remains in the same spot, waiting until Kang Hyun and Lee Soo have clearly defeated the security team. Only then does he attempt to flee, but his choice of attire, a bathrobe and slippers, makes him an easy target for arrest, as he looks completely out of place trying to run from the police. His attempt to make a getaway fails miserably, and he's quickly apprehended by Lee Soo and Kang Hyun. At the police station, the third son admits that he was on the boat with the victim, but he insists that he didn't kill her. Instead, he claims he only strangled her slightly until she passed out, explaining that his actions were due to his inability to handle rejection, as he is a misogynist. Rather than pleading guilty, he shifts the blame and suggests that the drugs found on the yacht must have been placed there by his drug-addicted brother, the second son, who he believes used the boat after he left. To back up his story, Jun Young reviews the CCTV footage and, sure enough, spots the second son boarding the boat. This oversight in the police investigation, however, raises some red flags. It feels like a plot hole designed to introduce a new suspect and create a red herring, allowing the story to shift focus and add another layer of intrigue. Enter the second son, who casually strolls into the police station to check on his younger brother. There's clearly no love between the two siblings, and the third son seizes the chance to point the investigation toward his brother. He quickly searches the second son, revealing that, in a rather foolish move, the second son has walked into the police station with a bag of drugs in his pocket. This little detail immediately points the investigation in a new direction. Just when you think the situation couldn't get any more chaotic, more members of this dramatic Chable family continue to arrive at the police station, one by one. With each new arrival, Lee Soo is right there to help his fellow officers identify the new faces and, of course, spill the latest gossip about each one. It quickly becomes clear that this family is as Mac Jang, outrageous and over the top, as they come. The Violent Crimes Unit decides to sit back and enjoy the spectacle unfolding before them, hoping that the chaos will eventually lead to the family members incriminating themselves. The situation is so entertaining that Lee Soo even shares some popcorn with Choi Kyung-jin, the rookie member of the Violent Crimes team, as they watch the drama play out. Eventually, a full-blown fight breaks out at the police station, causing chaos and disruption. The Violent Crimes Unit, which has been working diligently on their investigation, steps in to break up the scuffle and restore order, quickly returning to their tasks. In the aftermath, the second son of DN Media is arrested for drug possession. However, when questioned about the murder, he continues to deny any involvement in killing the victim. Instead, he claims that he did push her into the water, but only because he was high at the time and mistook her for some kind of evil ghost or supernatural entity. However, forensic evidence has already established that the victim died from blunt force trauma to the head after being pulled out of the water. This leaves one of two possibilities: either the second son is lying, or someone else must have retrieved the victim from the water before striking her on the head. As the investigation continues to unfold, it becomes evident that, much like any intense Mac Jang, a dramatic story, all the backstabbing and murders are tied to a much larger issue: inheritance. The chairman of DN Media is dying from cancer, and his sons, along with their mothers, are playing a ruthless game to see who can come out on top as the most likely successor. The victim, it turns out, is the chairman's illegitimate child, making her a significant figure in this power struggle. Initially, all the evidence points toward wife number 1, the mother of the chairman's first son, who would stand to lose the most if the victim, as an illegitimate child, were allowed any claim to the inheritance. Her attempt to flee the country is elaborate and well-planned, but it is thwarted when Lee-soo and Kang-hyun intervene in what can only be described as their own version of a fast and furious, soul chopper-style chase. When wife number 1 is later forced to confess, Lee-soo begins to suspect that she might be protecting her son. With this new theory in mind, Lee-soo taps into illegal wiretapping to gather information from wife number 2, and this results in uncovering crucial evidence. Wife number 1 had conspired with her son and her secretary to murder the victim and frame the younger sons for the crime. In the end, every member of the dysfunctional family is arrested for their various criminal activities. Despite Lee-soo solving the case, Kang-hyun reluctantly agrees that he won the bet between them. However, the rest of the violent crimes team, with the exception of the enthusiastic fanboy Kyung-jin, remains too bitter to accept Lee-soo's presence on the team. They refuse his invitation to dinner at a fancy restaurant, and Kang-hyun's ego is significantly bruised because she's been outdone by a silver spoon chaebol once again. Jun-young tries to console her by insisting that Lee-soo's success was nothing more than a fluke. He argues that this particular murder was perfectly suited to Lee-soo's specific knowledge and expertise, suggesting that Lee-soo won't be as insightful when faced with cases that don't involve wealthy chaebol families. Kang-hyun's deep-seated prejudices against people born with silver spoons in their mouths have made it difficult for her to see the real Lee-soo behind the extravagant lifestyle and his seemingly frivolous spending habits. Yes, Lee-soo may walk the chaebol walk and talk the chaebol talk, but the truth is that the case hits Lee-soo harder than anyone realizes. In fact, he relates more to the victim than anyone else, especially when he thinks about her being an unwanted illegitimate child, much like he himself feels at times. Lee-soo may be surrounded by wealth and privilege, but his personal struggles and deep-seated emotional wounds tie him to the victim in ways that no one, least of all Kang-hyun, truly understands. After the violent crimes unit declines Lee-soo's dinner invitation, Sung-ju steps in to celebrate with him instead. The two brothers sit down together and share a drink, a quiet moment where Lee-soo reflects on what his life could have been like if Sung-ju had seen him as nothing more than a competitor. Lee-soo begins to wonder why Sung-ju chose to treat him kindly and protect him growing up. Was there some ulterior motive behind Sung-ju's actions? Sung-ju, as he admits, originally pitied Lee-soo. It wasn't Lee-soo's fault that he was born into such complicated circumstances, nor was it his fault that his mother tragically passed away. This left Lee-soo to grow up under the care of his father and stepmother, Jo Hee-ja, a situation that was far from ideal. As Sung-ju reflects on their childhood, it becomes clear that, at first, he simply felt sorry for Lee-soo. Sung-ju was motivated by a desire to counteract the mistreatment Lee-soo faced from their family, particularly from their stepmother, Hee-ja. Over time, however, a real, genuine bond grew between them. Today, Sung-ju continues to stand up for Lee-soo, especially when it comes to the cruel actions of Chairman Jin and Hee-ja. In a turn of events, Hee-ja's cruelty becomes apparent once again when she enthusiastically forces Lee-soo out of his apartment. This leads Lee-soo to move back into his childhood home, a place that happens to be conveniently located right across the street from Kang-hyun's house, where she lives with her parents. It's a small world, and in Dramaland, things are often just a bit too perfectly timed. Their new proximity to each other presents an opportunity for convenient rideshare arrangements, especially when they have a new murder investigation to tackle. Kang-hyun's SUV, however, proves to be as unreliable as it is filthy, making the short commute even more troublesome than it would otherwise be. At the gallery, Lee-soo is the first to arrive and quickly preserves the murder scene of Young-jae before calling Kang-hyun. It's still early in the morning, and Kang-hyun is asleep since it's her off day. However, she soon arrives at the gallery, followed by Jun-young, Kyung-jin, and the forensics team. Upon examining the crime scene, Kang-hyun wastes no time and quickly concludes that Young-jae has been dead for more than 10 hours. She orders Kyung-jin to collect the audience's contact information and let them go, as they are no longer needed. Lee-soo is left wondering how Kang-hyun was able to determine the time of death so precisely, which gives Jun-young the opportunity to make fun of Lee-soo for not catching on. Later, Kang-hyun proceeds to interrogate two key individuals connected to the victim, Young-jae's assistant, Kwon Do-jun, and the gallery director, Ju Hwa-young. Each person shares a differing opinion of the deceased artist. Kwon Do-jun describes Young-jae as kind and friendly, whereas Ju Hwa-young paints a much darker picture, claiming that Young-jae had a bad temper. The gallery director also mentions an incident where someone had barged into Youngjae's studio and spilled red paint all over his paintings. However, despite the attack, Youngjae chose to let the person go without reporting them. When Kang Hyun presses the director on whether she knew the individual who caused the damage, the director explains that she was away on a business trip at the time of the incident. Additionally, the detectives hit another roadblock when they learn that the CCTV footage from the gallery is inaccessible. The director informs them that the tapes were replaced the day before the murder, leaving them with no footage to aid their investigation. Kang Hyun and Lee-soo, assuming that the hardest part of their day will be informing Youngjae's family of his death, are taken aback when they meet his wife. She shows no surprise or sorrow at the news. Instead, she bluntly calls her late husband a jerk and says that he deserved to die. She also provides an alibi, claiming that she was out with her boyfriend all night. After the tense meeting, Lee-soo requests to go home, mentioning that he has some personal matters to attend to. Later, we see Lee-soo's assistant and movers carrying his belongings into a house across the street from Kang Hyun's family home. Lee-soo has moved back into his childhood home after being kicked out of his current residence by his stepmother. Despite the tension with his stepmother, Lee-soo receives a warm and welcoming reception from Kang Hyun's mother. Sung-joon soon learns that Lee-soo has moved out of his current home and confronts his mother about it. Overcome with emotion, she starts crying and begins to explain how much she has suffered because of Lee-soo's mother, hinting at past hardships. Meanwhile, Lee-soo's father sends a text to an unknown person, informing them that Lee-soo has returned to his childhood home. The mysterious individual responds by advising him not to let Lee-soo stay there, as it could trigger memories that Lee-soo has long forgotten. The following morning, Lee-soo discovers to his surprise that Kang Hyun is his neighbor, living right across the street. They end up carpooling together to work when Kang Hyun's car refuses to start. Their first stop is Youngjae's art gallery, where they hope to speak with his assistant again regarding the case. They ask for more details about the woman who had once spilled red paint on one of Youngjae's paintings. Thankfully, the assistant has a record of the confrontation, which provides new insight. In the video, the woman is seen angrily stating that the painting reveals something that should never have been shown and accuses Youngjae of being a murderer. The woman is identified as Jaeon-sun, and it quickly becomes clear that she harbors deep resentment toward Youngjae. She explains that her daughter was one of Youngjae's students and that he plagiarized her artwork, showcasing it in exhibitions as his own. Jaeon-sun recounts how she and her daughter tried everything in their power to expose him, including reporting him to the school and even suing him, but they were dismissed and ignored. When they rejected Youngjae's offer to send her daughter abroad to study in exchange for dropping the lawsuit, Youngjae retaliated by countersuing, accusing Jaeon-sun's daughter of plagiarizing his work. In the end, the lawsuit and the immense stress led to her daughter's tragic death. As the investigation unfolds, the detectives are left with three prime suspects: Do-jun, the assistant who has always been underappreciated; Hwa-young, the wife who appears indifferent to her husband's death; and Jaeon-sun, the mother who was bitter and broken over the loss of her daughter. The detectives now must carefully evaluate each one to determine who had the strongest motive to kill Youngjae. After a thorough investigation into the wife's boyfriend, Bae Jin-kyu, the detectives uncover some troubling information. Bae Jin-kyu has a criminal record, having been convicted of fraud, and is living a lavish lifestyle, spending money recklessly. He has also been talking about starting a business, claiming that he has investors lined up. The detectives dig deeper and find that Youngjae had taken out a substantial life insurance policy, which would provide an easy payout to the wife in the event of his death. This becomes a clear motive for the wife, especially considering that all of Youngjae's other real estate investments would be much harder to liquidate. The detectives decide to bring both the wife and the boyfriend in for questioning. The wife firmly denies any involvement in her husband's death, particularly in relation to the 2 billion won life insurance policy. She insists that she is not interested in giving the boyfriend that much money for his business and states that she is planning to break up with him. During the interrogation, she suggests that the detectives should focus on the assistant, Do-jun, who has a possible motive. She claims that Do-jun has been working tirelessly at Youngjae's side, hoping for a chance to debut as an artist under Youngjae's guidance, but he received no support from his boss in return. As the investigation continues, it is revealed that Do-jun was secretly making plans to study abroad, with the sponsorship of the Artists Foundation. Meanwhile, Jun-young begins to suspect that the wife might be stalling for time, potentially preparing to escape. However, Kang Hyun believes that they should pursue this lead and investigate further. In an unexpected turn of events, a mouse entering Lee-soo's new house leads to a fluke discovery. Lee-soo's new painting, which he had bought, turns out to have another painting underneath it, and upon closer inspection, the signature on the hidden artwork matches that of Do-jun. Meanwhile, Kang Hyun questions a staff member from the Artists Foundation and learns some crucial details. The staff member reveals that Do-jun was selected for a prestigious scholarship to study abroad, but his academic advisor had called to accuse him of plagiarism, which ultimately led to the cancellation of his scholarship. Kyung-jin, working on another lead, discovers that Do-jun had purchased a scarf that is strikingly similar to the one Jaeon-sun's daughter had bought for her mother's birthday. This adds another layer of suspicion to Do-jun's involvement. Tensions reach a peak when Do-jun, realizing that Lee-soo has discovered the hidden painting with his signature, knocks him out. This sets the stage for the next twist in the investigation.